as good as LSU's been in the past and has as many issues as they've given Alabama on the road at Baton Rouge at night, Alabama should not lose this game.
No.
Hi, I'm Wade.
I'm Meyer.
I'm Tyler.
And this is the Totally Biased Sports Podcast. Yeah, so this is our first show. Basically, this is just going to be a little bit of a college football podcast. We're going to sit here and talk about the games, talk about what we saw, and just enjoy some college football.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll get started with the biased pick, or no, best of the rest.
Best of the rest, yeah.
Best of the rest.
So you want to explain this for us, Wade?
So essentially what the best of the rest segment is we're going to be looking at all the games that happened over this past Saturday, and we're going to be taking a couple of games that maybe got overlooked a little bit. Some games that maybe some people haven't really thought about, didn't really watch, and just kind of say some fun things that happened in all. Who wants to start?
I can go first.
Oh, sweet.
So, my pick was the Liberty-Arkansas game, okay? And that had to do with the fact that, first of all, Hugh Freeze coming in, getting his first SEC win ever, and then also, I mean, Liberty probably felt disrespected not being in the college football playoff polls. I mean, they made the AP poll, and they were out of. They probably felt a little like Georgia did. You know, they got moved back when the college football playoff polls came out. And I think, if anything, this game just proved that they are top 25 and they need to be in that college football playoff poll.
What a weird football team Liberty is. They looked absolutely awful at the start of this year. And all of a sudden, they're coming out and beating teams like Arkansas.
I mean, Arkansas is probably not as good as most people. I mean, they were top 10, like week 3?
Yeah,
lost
true.
to Bama. Did they lose South Carolina?
It was the moment they got.
No, they beat South Carolina.
Did they lose to A&M then?
Yes.
They lost to A&M,
A&M's last win,
which is horrible. And then now they lose to this, and they're unranked. That's just sad.
It is sad. And what's sad too, the most sad part is it was right after that dude got that big 30-wheel tractor trailer to carry all the football equipment that has a beer fridge in it. Right after he got that, Arkansas went downhill.
Everyone needs to sell that.
It's a very concerning trend. So, Meyer, what's your pick?
Well, I chose the Houston SMU game. At first glance, it might look like a basketball game. The final score, SMU 77 to Houston 63. Tanner Mordecai, SMU's quarterback, threw 9 touchdowns, 28 for 37, 379 yards. Sometimes you'll see a 77-point game from Ohio State when they're playing a cupcake or something.
Like Northwestern?
Yeah, like Northwestern. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. But yeah, 77 to 63. Usually when you see a 77-point game, it's like 77 to 10, 77 to 3, maybe. Not a combined, 40 points? Yeah, that's a little ridiculous, so that is my pick.
It's crazy. And that's a Houston team, too, that just, they hate each other there.
Yeah, maybe not the best team environment.
No, not at all. I think the defenses were just on, break or something. They were not able to play football for whatever reason. Yeah. So I'm going to go on to my pick now. My pick was the Oregon State-Washington game that happened on Friday. I think people didn't really get to see this game, which is kind of sad because it was a really, really good football game. From start to finish, it was tight all the way down to the end. Washington ends up picking up the win in a very close one. Michael Penix played really, really well.
Yeah.
I just think that it is interesting because I think Washington, you got to look at them, they might have a chance to beat Oregon. Now, of course, they kind of got a... I mean, yeah, it was a close game all throughout. It really kind of looked like Oregon State had it under control for most of this game, and then Washington kind of was able to kind of sneak up at the end, though it was close all the way throughout. So, yeah, Oregon State-Washington was just... If you have any way of watching the game, I think it was on ESPN, go give it a watch. I mean...
It was late at night, though. What was it, 10:30 or on the East Coast?
10:30 Eastern, yeah.
It was 10:30. It was a late kick, but, man, it was a great game.
Yeah.
And if you got time, that Washington team's looking pretty daggum good.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they're 7-2 as of that win.
they got a chance.
They play Oregon next week, or it's in the next few weeks. I think they play Oregon.
Their next game is Oregon. Yes.
Yeah.
That might be a hint for the preview show. I might not be taking Oregon in that one.
Oregon favored by 2 touchdowns in that game.
Oh man, that's crazy. All right, so that was the biased takes of the week. Next, the next segment we're going to hop on to is it's going to be the biased take of the week. We're going to be talking about the Heisman race and how much it shifted in 1 week. And we're going to be focusing primarily on whether or not Blake Corum could take it. What are y'all's thoughts, guys?
I think right now, I mean, first of all, Stroud, horrible game. You can talk about, 40, 50 mile an hour winds. But, I mean, when you're going to get not win, yeah. But you're going to have to, like, Northwestern's QB went through 14 passes to Stroud's 26 and outperformed him, had 3 more pass yards. And, like, if you're going to be leading in the Heisman race, you shouldn't be in question who's going to be the better quarterback coming into a 1-7 Northwestern team that, first of all, hasn't even won a game in North America in over a year. I mean, they played Nebraska and Ireland like week 0 or something. They haven't won a football game in North America this year, and it was close. Like, the game was in question. And I think Corum, when they play, especially week 13, when they play Ohio State, I mean, you saw what Evan Hull was able to do to Ohio State's defense. Now imagine what Blake Corum and Michigan's offensive line is going to be able to do to Ohio State's defense. I think Corum's going to go off week 13. I think he's number 1 right now. I don't know how Stroud and Hooker are going to come back after this. Because, I mean, Hooker's got easier schedule. Like, this is probably the easiest 3-game stretch he's had all season since maybe the beginning or something, right? And then Ohio State, I mean, they always have an easy schedule. But, I mean, they do have Michigan coming up, so we'll see.
Even Maryland might be tough for them, too.
Yeah. Maryland's away, I think, too, so.
Yeah. It's at OSU this year, right? Because, I think it was at Michigan last year, and I saw
it. Yeah,
so
the Michigan game is in Columbus this year.
That's one thing about it. I mean, not to get too much into that game, because that is kind of the game of the season, though, trying to determine who's going to come out of the Big Ten. Man, Corum has been downright insane this year. I don't know if he passes into my top 3 right now, though, honestly. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I still think you got to look at the body of work for the rest of the year for a lot of these quarterbacks, right? CJ Stroud has been really, really good for the rest of the year, and also was playing. I'm pretty sure I saw like Mordor gates open and like hobbits start running out on the field. It looked like a scene out of a Tolkien book. Okay, it was not a pretty place to play football. And Hooker, look, he had a rough game against Georgia. Don't get me wrong.
Horrible game. That game missed. How many deep throws did he miss that game?
He missed
3 one. He missed one to Bruce McCoy and like Bruce McCoy. Horace McCoy. That better for you guys? Yeah, Horace. No, so he misses one like the third quarter. That's probably a touchdown, and he missed one to Jalen Hyatt early. That I'm not going to say it's going to swing the game because Tennessee played horrible. They that place looked horrible to play, and I saw the score like the jumbotron in the background, and it was like 120 decibels at one point. We played horrible, but I think that changes it a little bit if you get high early on a deep ball. I mean that can shift.
Yeah, that might change the momentum, of course. Yeah,
yeah, and I mean we're gonna get into the Tennessee Georgia game later, but I still like Hendon Hooker. I think he's played really good most of the season. I think that the people that are kind of coming after him, saying that he is a product of the system, in some ways are right, is what I will say.
Absolutely right.
But at the same time, I don't think Tennessee is where they were at going into the Georgia game without a quarterback like Hendon Hooker that was so productive, so accurate.
Smart. He's really smart with the football. I mean, you have to only have one takeaway before that game.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously leaving the game, he didn't have one.
He did not have one.
But, golly, Keely Ringo, that was a heck of a pick.
Oh, yeah, no.
But, anyways, we're going to be getting into that game a little bit later. But, yeah, for me personally, I have Hooker and CJ Stroud higher right now. And then I think basically after that, I like what Bo Nix is doing right now, man. Some people kind of still look at him as the guy from Auburn that played like garbage.
Bo Picks?
Yeah, Bo Picks. But no, I don't think he's that terrible of a guy anymore by any means. Now, don't get me wrong, Bo Nix was kind of perceptible to random spurts of terrible football, but lately he's been playing really, really good for Oregon. He lit UCLA's defense up.
That's true. That UCLA win is looking very good right now.
Yeah.
And kind of what we've seen as Oregon has proved to be so good is that when people are saying that Georgia hadn't played anybody yet, that Oregon win started looking better and better every week.
Yeah.
But I also think that Oregon team is looking a lot different than they did week 1. I think Bo has turned it around because he looked horrible that first game.
He can't play against the SEC, maybe.
Probably not. I mean, he's proven that time and time again. But
a problem if you played at Oregon.
Yeah.
Or not Oregon, Auburn. But
yeah.
I think right now, though, if I had to give my official rankings for week 9, going into week 10, I'm probably putting Stroud at 1 still. I think I'm putting Bo Nix at 2 after what I saw happen with Hendon Hooker. I think I'm putting Hooker at 3, and I think Corum's 4 for me. 5, I like Drake May. I don't trust that North Carolina team. I just don't trust them. They're going to end up letting 49 points up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, speaking of that North Carolina team, I think the ACC as a whole has kind of proved to be the worst conference this year. Of course, Clemson, everybody was hating on them when they got their 4th rank, saying that they hadn't played anybody. I was a little skeptical still, but still, they were 2nd or something in strength of record, because they still had that win over NC State, Wake Forest. They had one other ranked win, Syracuse. Yeah. But Syracuse got throttled by Notre Dame last week, got handled by Pitt this week. NC State hasn't looked the same. Of course, they lost their quarterback, but still, just that loss by Clemson from Notre Dame kind of is making the ACC not look great right now. And maybe if UNC can beat Clemson in the ACC championship, which I don't think is likely, but maybe they have a shot to go to the college football playoffs. Doubtful, very doubtful.
I don't think you can put like.
I don't
North
think
Carolina
any team in the ACC though after this week is going to the playoffs.
I don't think so either. I think their best chance, their only chance, really was with Clemson. Also, North Carolina plays Wake Forest next week, so they are by no means looking like they're going to just coast.
Yeah,
and then they finish with NC State. So I don't know if North Carolina is going to finish quite. They're really high right now, but they almost lost to Georgia State, and almost lost to App State. Right,
they barely scraped by this week too against Virginia.
Yeah,
a terrible Virginia team.
And I'm going to have to say it. If North Carolina gets in the playoff, then how many teams above them have to lose, right?
Oh, quite a few.
A lot. And I just don't think it's going to happen in the next 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we'll get into our next segment. The segment's shockingly bad. And this week is just the color orange had a rough week.
Badly.
It was rough. Tennessee lost, Syracuse lost, Oregon State lost, Clemson lost.
Oklahoma State got blown out to make Kansas bowl eligible for the first time in ages.
Rushed the field and everything.
Yeah.
Illinois lost. Yeah, so that's just...
Illinois, some people were saying they still have playoff hopes alive if they could win the Big Ten West and then maybe somehow beat Ohio State or Michigan, whoever comes out of that game.
Yeah.
So I think that is officially over for them.
Absolutely.
Somehow beat Ohio State or Michigan is a great point.
Yeah, we saw a few teams this week that still had a chance to make the playoffs kind of fumble the bag there.
Yeah. It really did.
We'll get to one of those games soon.
We can we'll subtract Texas from the color orange though. Texas, I mean, they came in, everyone was riding high on Kansas State after they came in and won last week, and then Texas comes in and they take care of business. Like we've known,
at Kansas State, no less.
Like we've known this Texas team can be good since week 2, right? We saw how Quinn Ewers was lighting up Bama's defense, okay? And then he got hurt, sadly. And then, Hudson Card was still lighting up Bama's defense, but he was, on one foot trying to throw the ball 40 yards down the field and just couldn't. They've let us down a lot. We were high when Quinn Ewers came back, and then they fell a few times. They could, with a win against TCU next week, that could be big for them. So I think Texas, probably the best orange team of the week, by far.
A win by Texas over TCU would also be very good for some of those teams after this week are maybe on the outside looking in. Your Tennessees, your Oregons, those 5, 6, 7 teams.
USC maybe.
USC even.
I don't think Tennessee's on the outside looking in. I will say that. I think they're probably 4 right now.
I got them at 5. I got them at 5.
I think I'd put them at 4. I think as tough as the Georgia game is, in my opinion, you're looking at that 4 spot where you're saying, okay, do we put TCU in over Tennessee, right? My opinion, you don't. Now, I'm biased. That's the name of the show. But I still like Tennessee. I still think you got to give them credit for a really, really good Alabama win. The blowout against LSU looks better and better every week.
Especially at Death Valley, you know?
Yeah, at Death Valley. I get it was a noon kick, and LSU has looked better. But to act like that's not impressive given what's happened,
yeah.
I still would probably put Tennessee at 4 right now.
I think same as last week, everybody was complaining that Alabama got over TCU when they were still undefeated. I think Alabama last week and Tennessee this week, they probably can take care of TCU, but I think TCU deserves that spot. Just like I was skeptical last week that I thought Georgia would take care of Tennessee, but I still think Tennessee, they earned their spot at number 1. They had the best resume, best strength of record, one of the hardest schedules. Obviously, having played Georgia and Alabama every year. So I think Tennessee at the end of the year will jump TCU, but I think right now TCU deserves that spot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. I think you've got to look at what's happened this season, because I saw a lot of Georgia fans complaining like, oh, you got to beat the champions to be number 1. And I think that you can't like go about the mindset with it, like with the playoff ranking. It's got to be like what's happened this season. And what's happened this season is Tennessee came out, big win at LSU that, like you said, is looking better and better. They had a big win at Alabama, and they like demolished Kentucky.
Not at Alabama, but
not against Alabama. Yeah. And then a big win against Kentucky that's, I mean, probably not looking as good because Kentucky's kind of floundered recently. But it's still, I mean, that's still 44-6, especially with how much Tennessee's defense has been called into question. Really big. But I think when you look at just this season, like, while I do think Tennessee, and if Tennessee and TCU played, Tennessee would win, I think you've got to put TCU in the playoffs at number 4. You can't just ignore the number 1 in the Big 12 right now, undefeated. I think you've got to at least put him at 4.
I could see that of right now. I think that's what will happen. I just want to get that out there.
Yeah.
I think I think Tennessee will probably end up being 5 or 6, depending on what they think about LSU's win. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be ridiculous to put LSU above Tennessee.
Yeah, like we've seen what happened against those two teams. Like,
I mean, LSU has looked better. I don't think they've looked that much better.
No.
I think the only team that you could, if Tennessee somehow moves back to 6, I think they're practically a lock for 5 in my opinion. But I think if they move to 6, the only team ahead of them is going to be Oregon.
I could see it.
But I think the only way Oregon moves above Tennessee is with a Pac-12 championship, because they both have a loss to Georgia, and one, because we say Oregon like, oh, it was week 1, they're just getting used to it. I mean, how many defensive players did Georgia lose last year?
Quite a few.
It's week 1 for them too, and to go out and do that like was a big. I don't think it's talked about enough, right? So I think just Tennessee got manhandled by Georgia. They got beaten every aspect of the game, but I don't think Oregon could be above them just with that week 1 loss, unless maybe with a Pac-12 championship, because the committee does like champions. Like
that's true.
Unfortunately for Tennessee, they can't beat champions.
No,
in the SEC,
unless Georgia somehow loses.
Extreme circumstances would happen.
Kentucky, yeah. Speaking of Kentucky, by the way, they almost lost to Missouri this past week.
But Will Levis is still a top 3 pick, right?
Look, Will Levis looks worse and worse every single week.
Kentucky may have gotten some help from the refs in that game too.
But
yeah.
But
I don't know. I saw Kuiper's draft board, and he had Levis at 4 and Bryce Young at 5, and that's like, you should be like fired for things like that. Like this was after he goes out and throws 3 picks against, again, Tennessee's defense, which gets called into question every single week. Which I don't even think they played bad at Georgia, which
they really didn't.
2 turnovers.
Obviously, they were outperformed by Georgia's defense, but still, they played probably better than a lot of their games. Like, of course, they gave up 49 to Alabama.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Bryce Young, but still 49 points.
I will say, I would want to see this Tennessee. If I could see the Tennessee Georgia game in the SEC championship, oh my gosh, I'd love to see it because I think a lot of Tennessee's issue was that Georgia got up early on them, right?
Yeah.
And Tennessee hasn't really had that all year.
We are not a team that can come from behind. We are a team that gets up early and like the other team just starts slowly creeping up, right? That's what Tennessee is about, not about going up behind. Because your defense...
And they're about flying offense, right?
Yeah, fly and die, you know?
Yeah.
Go out, get as far ahead as you can, and try to hold on.
If you're relying on your defense to get multiple stops like you were in that Georgia game, because you're down 3 possessions, you're relying on that defense is good for like 2 stops, 2 or 3 in the first half, and maybe a few forced field goals throughout the game. And if you get that and maybe a turnover, like that defense has done its job. That's all you expect from them.
Yeah. All right. I think we're ready to move on to the main segment of the show, the biased games of the week. Who wants to start?
So we touched on this Georgia-Tennessee game quite a bit already, but one thing I want to talk about is Stetson Bennett, because that man went off. So, obviously, my dead grandmother probably could have won the national championship last year as quarterback with that Georgia defense. But credit where credit is due. He played amazing. He had that rushing touchdown at the beginning. He had that pass right under the uprights. A beautiful pass for a nice touchdown, too. Georgia ultimately played amazing. Their defense was very good. You talk a lot about Hooker having a bad game. Their defense, the primary reason for that. Not like a passing slump, not just like he woke up just not feeling good. Georgia's defense is the main reason he played that poorly. That safety, it was a safety.
No matter incomplete pass. Like it was probably a safety, right?
You could try to argue forward pass. You could probably get away with that.
You could not
argue whatever they called. That was no.
That was wrong.
I think the refs just felt bad at that point. They were just like, guys,
for hurting Hyatt. They had it out for him. They had it out, but they were trying to kill Jalen Hyatt.
Well, it's for last year when Jalen Hyatt was doing a post route and then just ran flat to a referee.
Shouldn't have been there.
Yeah,
he shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, but all I'm saying, if Tennessee somehow ends up winning that game by 1 point, Georgia has every right to be upset about the about the refs. Fortunately for Georgia, that didn't happen. They had quite the game. They played amazing. Tennessee played less than average. They had the crowd on their side. I think you said something about 120 decibels. I think I read online it hit 130. Which is ridiculous.
That wouldn't surprise me. I'm just saying, when I was watching the game, there's like a pic of the camera and the jumbotron in the background. Well, I don't even think the play was live, and it was like 120 decibels in there. Like, that's a horrible place to play.
Well, I will say this though. There were people leaving, and that stadium was reading like 130.
Like that.
So the thing is, I've also heard that's maybe inflated. Not exactly right. There's some reports about that, but I'm not gonna get into that. What I do want to get into is the fact that I think Georgia might be the only genuinely good football team in college football. That is my hot take right now.
I would say, I get what you're saying there, right? But I would say genuinely great. Because I feel like there's lots of good teams. Like, I think OSU is good. I think Michigan's good. I think Tennessee's good. I think, well, not Clemson anymore, I might have said. I think TCU is better than most teams give them credit for. I think Oregon's good. But I think Georgia, like, those teams are all pretty clumped together. I might even throw Alabama in there, maybe. They haven't played great this year, but Bryce Young can make probably any team look decent. He could probably go to Colorado and they'd make a bowl. But I think Georgia's just a step above them all right now.
I completely agree with that. And it's just, for me, I think it comes down to what teams I trust. And I think if you can match up Georgia, I think, against any team in the nation right now. And if you told me they'd win by 2 touchdowns, I'd believe it. If you told me they went out against Ohio State, shut down that passing offense, and just ran all over them, I'd believe it. But I feel like the opposite is true as a lot of the other the opposite is true as for a lot of these other teams, right? If you would have told me Ohio State went out against Maryland and lost by a touchdown,
I believe
I could
that.
see it. Yeah.
I could see it. If Michigan got throttled by Ohio State,
Yeah.
I'd believe it, right? And as bad as Tennessee got beat, I wouldn't call what happened a throttling. They got beat pretty bad, right? It got beat pretty daggum bad. A throttling, though, is what happened to Oklahoma against Texas.
That's fair. That's fair. I think there's going to be people that say, oh, the score is not as bad as it seemed. Hooker had like an off day, missed some throws that could have changed the momentum. There's going to be the Georgia fans that say, oh, we just tried to run the ball and run out the clock, which they did very well in the second half. That's why you only put up 3. Again, like most things, you're going to find that like what actually happened is somewhere in the middle. I think the score is pretty showing of what happened in that game.
Honestly, you could say the score doesn't reflect. One of that touchdown they had was kind of in garbage time.
Yeah, UT's garbage. But I don't know. I feel like with the 2 or 3 missed throws by Hooker, I feel like
I'd say everything evens out.
I'd say it evens out with everything, and so I feel like the scores, like Georgia beat them by 2 touchdowns. I think that's pretty fair. Georgia played their type of football. Tennessee tried to play their type of football, and it didn't work. Georgia, I will say, I've noticed. So you have like when Tennessee played Kentucky, Kentucky would have like 60 Bs, and then Tennessee would just run it, or they would, and deep balls would still get open, like Jalen Hyatt just in the corner somewhere. No one, Kentucky doesn't know where, but they would drop back and they forced Tennessee to throw short, and I think it worked. I mean, I think that stifled that offense.
I would have to agree with that. So, let's go move on to, I guess, your bias pick.
My bias pick of the game. Mine was the Notre Dame Clemson game. I think a lot of people who, after that Tennessee-Georgia game, that wanted to see Tennessee somehow squeak in maybe a 3 or 4, this was their next look, and they were probably switching back and forth between the Bama-LSU game, okay? And so you look at this, and you get reports coming out, oh, Notre Dame's up 7-0 off of a blocked punt. You see DJ throw as many touchdown passes Notre Dame as Notre Dame's quarterback does. Okay? So, I mean, and you look at the score and you're just checking and it's 21-0 and you're feeling a bit better because that's just another like obstacle in like Tennessee, TCU, Oregon's way, right? And so I think, I don't know, Clemson finally, how do I say, like they finally had their player, like the other team show up. You had the Syracuse game, they probably should have lost. I mean, DJ gets, he get benched at halftime in the Syracuse game. Yeah. And then Syracuse doesn't score in the second half. But they kept DJ in this entire game, which...
They didn't.
No. Klubnik had 1 pass.
He threw a pick.
Klubnik had 1 pass for a pick. You're right. I apologize. I'm sorry. They kept DJ in for a while. He had that pick 6 that I don't even know where. I think he was throwing to Notre Dame at that point. That was a horrible pass. I think...
This is another game where the score doesn't reflect how close it actually was. Their second touchdown was 100% garbage time.
Yeah, no, I think Notre Dame came out and dominated. I think Notre Dame's coaching hire, like he's definitely
Marcus Freeman.
He's a player's coach. You saw the reaction when he came in and all the players were hyped up. I think that Marshall loss was pretty bad. They hung in with OSU in week 1 though. I'll give them credit. They hung in. They were up for a bit. They were up like 3 or 7-0 at one point. So I think Notre Dame showing that
Stanford was a bad loss too.
Yeah, and Marshall was bad. I think they're showing that they've had some hiccups. They're getting used to maybe Freeman a bit. I think they changed quarterbacks midway through the season.
They can show up for good teams.
Yeah, and you kind of like that's like not a dark horse for they're bowl eligible now. So I think they're good. I think they might slip into the 20s on Tuesday. I don't know. Do they get? They were
I think they'll slip into more.
They were 20th in the AP.
They were 20th.
Yes.
Okay.
I think they'll find a way to slip into the teens. Honestly, I think 18, 19.
I don't know if I do that.
Football playoff love their brands. Okay,
they do. And Notre Dame is that's a big name team.
It's a brand.
I still think they should be in a conference.
I also think you can make the argument similar to Georgia that Notre Dame is a team that plays down to their opponents.
Yeah.
Probably a main reason that they lost to those Marshall and Stanford teams.
Yeah.
Stanford probably one of the bottom 5 Power 5 teams.
Stanford is awful.
Colorado.
Along with Northwestern, which,
I still think it's funny. They were winning the Big Ten West like 2 of the last 4 years, and now they're 1-8. Like,
well, Northwestern is a team. They're either good or they're terrible, unwatchably bad.
And it's also not hard to win the Big Ten West. I mean, you look at it's similarly structured to the ACC, where you just have all the good teams on one side. Like you have like what was it? Clemson, Wake Forest, NC State, someone else in like Syracuse, and all on one side of the ACC. And then in the Big Ten, you've got Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, all in the Big Ten East.
Maryland, even.
Yeah. And you probably could have made that argument before, like these past few years about the SEC, because you always had Auburn and Alabama, and Missouri was good in like the mid.
A&M, LSU.
Missouri had
LSU.
1 year where they were like really good.
I remember, what was it, the Kick 6 year, where it was Missouri and Auburn in the SEC championship
and then
game.
Auburn beat the crap out of them.
And then Auburn goes and loses in the Natty to FSU. But
tough.
No, but now that Georgia's on the rise, the East, if you would have told me like at the beginning of the season that the East would have been the best SEC conference, I would have been like, maybe. I would have been hopeful. But the way Tennessee has outperformed all expectations, Georgia's performed pretty much up to their expectations. You can't, like, probably couldn't have risen up too much, you know? And then...
I mean, Florida and Kentucky have disappointed.
Yeah. Especially after week 1. I mean, you had Anthony Richardson going off. And I still think he is a super talented quarterback. I just don't think it's there yet. Because it's like Joe Milton last year when he started out for Tennessee. Like, could he sling that football beautifully? Absolutely. And then you'd groan when it landed 15 feet in front of Jalen Hyatt somehow, right? but he's got better this year. Joe Milton has gotten better. It'll be interesting to see the quarterback battle between him and Nico next year, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think the West is still probably better. As much crap as I like to give Ole Miss, they're like fine. They're a top 25 team, but they're not insane. I do actually like Mississippi State quite a bit too. That might be a sneaky team to go give Georgia some trouble. Not saying they'll beat them. I just think that the way Mississippi State likes to play football is they really like to spread the ball out. And I think that you kind of look at the way they attack defenses. I think you could maybe see them being successful against Georgia, but I don't know. They just shut down Tennessee. Yeah. So it could also just be, a blowout.
Yeah, no, I mean, Mike Leach, amazing person. I mean, did you hear the quote about how they just want to eat their fish sandwich and go sip lemonade with their fat little girlfriends, He says that in a press conference. Okay. Like, that's the type of person Mike Leach is. And his air raid offense, he comes from Washington State, and he does that. And I think
Texas Tech originally, then Washington State.
Yeah, you're right. And so I think I like Mike Leach a lot. I think Mississippi State, they haven't performed like great this year, but I mean, look at the numbers that their quarterback has. Those are in some insane numbers.
That's just the air raid, man. Everybody in the air raid offense. That's what happened with freaking Ryan Leaf when they picked him over Peyton Manning.
Speaking of Mississippi State, I do want to talk about that Auburn game because Auburn, after firing Harsin, looks like a completely different team.
Motivated. I don't think they're going to keep him.
They play like they care now.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some questions about maybe they keep this guy as their next head coach, and I saw
Cadillac. I don't think so.
No. I just not like questions, but maybe like musings. Like they seem to like playing for him, and I think a good thing to do is get a good head coach, not like a Jimbo, right? Get a good one, but like keep Cadillac there because he seems like a player's guy, like a Marcus Freeman, but a little less,
You should say get Jimbo. Wait a minute.
No, I said not like Jimbo. Coach like Jimbo. Don't hire anyone for like 10-year contracts. Don't get ahead of yourself, Auburn. But
Auburn does Bruce Pearl is there for life apparently, so they do like those long contracts at Auburn.
You know what was funny? Just kind of get back to the Notre Dame Clemson game that was talked about here a second ago. Dabo Swinney was in that press conference, and he gave one of the funniest press conferences I think I've ever heard because he was just ragging his team. I mean, he was on their ass. It was so funny. I think the thing he's like quoted as saying is like, "We earned this loss tonight," and he said it with like conviction. I don't know, man. Dabo's I think a good coach. He's a weird dude.
Yeah.
But
one of my favorite quotes, I can't remember. I don't think it was after a Notre Dame game, but it was after another game. It might have been like the Syracuse where he goes, Steph Curry sometimes goes like 2 for 25, right? And I saw this on CBS's Instagram, and they go, "We asked our research team. Steph Curry has in fact never gone 2 for 25." So like, I thought it was funny that CBS was just pulling out the receipts from that quote right there. Like, no, that's not true, Dabo.
I love that. All right. I guess I'll get into the last totally biased pick of the week here. Alabama LSU was an awesome game.
Absolutely. It was the game people thought Georgia and Tennessee was going to be. People were hyping up Georgia and Tennessee as the game of the year. They were hoping it was going to be an Alabama Tennessee, but better. And then
that's just their own fault.
It wasn't an offensive struggle, or not an offensive struggle, two offenses going back to back to back like Alabama Tennessee was. It was more of like a defense version of that. In all honesty, it was who could score instead of who could get a stop.
Yeah, and what I thought was so crazy in this one is Jalen Daniels kind of outplayed Bryce Young.
That hurts me to say, because I think based on skill alone, Bryce Young probably should win the Heisman, right?
Yeah.
I think he's the best quarterback in the nation right now.
And he's not working with, I hate saying this, he's not working with a whole lot of
That wide receiver core is not what it used to be.
Jahmyr Gibbs, Bryce Young, and that one tight end that's okay is like most of their offense. Yeah. They got some fine-ish receivers, some guys that are really talented that just are not, straight up not performing. I think that the thing I take away from this game is LSU is a team that can either play very, very good or they can look terrible, right? Brian Kelly had this team playing very aggressive in the Alabama game. They were run blocking really, really well throughout most of this game, getting a great push on the Alabama.
Look at that first overtime play as well. I mean, one play overtime, just a little quick 25-yard run, Jalen Daniels, you know?
Yeah, and I loved for the most part their game plan, right? They found a way to confuse and aggravate Bryce Young. I don't remember how many picks he threw, but I know he threw one early
in that goal line. I was watching that live, but I was like barely. I was watching it while I ate, right? And I saw the little like shimmy and then the side throw, and I thought it was a touchdown pass. And I was like, gosh, that kid is unreal. And then I saw it was a pick, and I was like, first of all, let's go. And then I was like, well, it was still almost a good play.
We're a certified Alabama hater podcast.
Absolutely.
We'll give credit to the players in Alabama, but man, I just hope they generally aren't doing well. And this fills me with a little bit of joy. I think a lot of college football fans are just like, can we get any color besides maroon in the college football playoff? And we're finally going to see it. For the first time in, is it the whole history of it that Alabama's been out?
They did make it in 2019 when LSU won,
Burrow.
but that's the only other.
This could be the first time an SEC West team doesn't get in, right? We'd have to fact check that. But I feel like Bama and then
Bama
LSU
has made it every year except for the year LSU won, and of course LSU won it that year.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean,
this might be the first year no SEC West team makes it to the playoffs.
I mean, LSU does have some impressive wins, right? The biggest thing is they got. I mean, you want to talk about games that the scores don't really match what happened? That Tennessee LSU game could have been like 65-13.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee has shown one thing this year, and that, like, it's a little crack in their offense. They don't, off of turnovers, they don't score.
Yeah.
They had 2 turnovers at Georgia, right? And they got a field goal off the first one. And was that the touchdown off the second one? Do you remember? It might not. No, it
was not the touchdown.
It wasn't the touchdown.
Probably. They didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter.
Yeah. And then you go back to the Kentucky game, and there's 3 picks at the Kentucky game. And they got 7 points off of 3 picks. So I think Tennessee, they come off, and like the first play of the LSU game, it's a fumble off the kickoff, and they get like 3 points out of that, maybe.
Yeah, it's one or the other for Tennessee. If their defense starts to play well, their offense doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
it's weird. They do need to get better at capitalizing at that. I will definitely agree there. I want to kind of hit on a topic I think has kind of been sitting in the forefront of my mind, and it's something that came up in the Paul Feinbaum show the other day. But this is not a game Alabama should lose, right? As good as LSU's been in the past and has as many issues as they've given Alabama on the road at Baton Rouge at night, Alabama should not lose this game.
No.
The talent they have, Nick Saban's pedigree, this is not a game that Alabama goes into and expects problems out of. And LSU gave them problems all night. It wasn't like they snuck up on them.
No.
It was a fight, and LSU made it a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Daniels made it a fight.
Yeah, outstanding performance.
But I think the more and more I think about it, it does lead me to kind of the question, like, is this Alabama dynasty over?
I'm not going to count the Bama dynasty as much as I want to, right? Until Nick Saban is out of that office, okay? Until Nick Saban is not standing on that sideline, I will continue to question. Like, I will continue to think Bama's going to be a top 5 team coming in until they stop getting these crazy recruiting classes. Because even if they're not paying as much money as Texas A&M, they're still going to be in the top 10 because they're Alabama, you know? So until Saban is out of the job, I'm not going to count it over just yet. I think
also, we might wait, like, say they fire Bill O'Brien next year. How much better does that make them?
Yeah. I mean, 3 passes at Tennessee, like that was a horrible play calling at the end. That was so bad.
That was... Yeah, and, you know, I think for me, in my opinion, while I don't think this is the end of the dynasty, I think it's the end of an era for Alabama. I don't think they're going to go into every season consistently ranked number 1 from here on out. I think that they're going to have to fight, like a lot of other teams will, to get that spot, right? I think maybe the new Alabama could be Georgia in a lot of ways. They just seem to be super consistent and really good on defense every year and good at running the ball every year.
Consistent isn't a word I would use for this Georgia team, especially this year. They play down to their opponents, but they show up in big games. And I think they proved that last Saturday. They showed up in that Tennessee game. So I'm not disagreeing with that statement, but I wouldn't say that Georgia just plays perfect football and consistently all the time. I think they played down to Missouri. They played down to Kent State. And because that Missouri game was in question for a bit.
It was in question pretty much
until the last 4 minutes. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm mixed on it, but I personally think that there's a pretty good chance that I think Saban wants to get one more, but then I think he'll be done after that. I genuinely do, because it's just, you can tell he's kind of losing his touch with his people, and he didn't have the guys he used to.
He's 71 years old too. I mean,
those oatmeal cream pies got to start getting at some point. You know,
one of my favorite things about that Bama game, though, this is like some random off the wall thing that only I would probably appreciate, right? Was Will Reichard coming in at the end and sending it to overtime, because I feel like he got a lot of flack for that UT game for missing a 50-yard field goal. That
was not an easy field goal.
That's not a gimme. Like, people were acting like it was an extra point the way he apparently choked. I'm using air quotes with that. But I mean, you give NFL kickers, you line 32 NFL kickers up to make a 50-yard field goal. How many are making them?
I'd say 20 at most. Maybe.
I'd say about 20.
20, 25 with no crowd. And then you factor in the fact that you had the loudest Neyland Stadium has been on record.
123 decibels. That
was what Neyland Stadium was like that game. And you had that in your ear to make this game-winning kick. The pressure added, because first of all, if you just line up 32 NFL kickers make the field, there's gonna be no pressure there, right?
Yeah.
The pressure, the crowd, and the fact that it's a 50-yard kick. I mean, I feel like he got way too much hate. That's a tough. You've got to make that. I get that, but that's a tough kick, and I feel like your defense let up 52 points. We can calm down. 49 up to that point, and I think him coming in, because he was in a bit of a drought. He missed 3 at Texas A&M, didn't he? He missed a lot at Texas A&M, and I think him coming in and sending it to overtime, I think that shows he's an elite kicker. No, he is a very good kicker.
That almost mirrored Chase McGrath's kick too.
Dude, it was high with
not quite like how it looked, but it barely made it over.
It looked pretty, and then it I was surprised it was so short. I was like, what the heck?
Well, what's funny about it is Will Reichard was 4 for 4 in this game.
Yeah.
He was perfect. And without Will Reichard, Alabama would not even...
No. And I don't think he's going to get any credit for that. So I'm going to give my boy Will some credit for that.
Shout out to my boy Will.
Shout out to Brian Kelly. The balls on that guy.
The balls on that guy to go for 2.
This old geezer is not going for 2. He's going to double overtime.
That was my thought exactly. I got up to get food. I sat my phone to the side where I was watching it all. And not to get food, just to go across the house and get something from the pantry. And then my roommate comes by and he's like, "Hey, they're going for 2 there. Jalen Daniels is still on the field." And I was like, "There's no way Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly is an old man's coach."
I'm 90% sure he's about to fossilize.
That guy. And then, fair enough to him. I guess you can teach an old dog new tricks, but that's an impressive. I like the go for 2. Utah, what they did to USC. I know you don't like the go for 2. You think it's stupid.
I think it's very risky.
But
I mean, it works. So you see a lot of NFL teams going for 2 more often.
You're still upset about the Titans loss.
You had the Giants. They went for 2. Yeah.
Well, I like what I love so much about the going for two, especially when you're at home, when you have the momentum, just end it right out. Don't give the other team an opportunity.
I think that's another advantage to defending first in overtime in college football.
Yep.
Because first of all, that's the obvious answer. Because then, they don't score. You just need a field goal. They only get a field goal. You just got to get a touchdown. But now you throw in the fact that I can just go for two and end the game. But but Nick Saban can't call the go for two because he doesn't get that, and then they win with an extra point.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, it's tough, but that's most of the show. The last thing we're gonna hit on today is the biased ballers of the week. It's gonna happen every week. Just kind of talk about some guys that we thought balled out this week. So we're gonna go ahead and start. Meyer, do you want to start?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, my pick, Stetson Bennett. I always thought a little overrated. He most quarterbacks could have won last year, but I mean,
he had a really good game.
He played great. He rushed. He ran the ball well. He had some dimes. Some of those passes were
under the goalpost, the deep ball.
Yeah, that was amazing.
The celebration after the run TD was kind of funny. Like the call me again. That was I saw it on Saturday Down South, I think, where Tennessee fans leaked his phone number and called him all night. And he gets up and does it's like a call me celebration after he scores a touchdown. And you've earned that. You've earned that.
I will say this: Stetson Bennett is really that dude. Okay, he's hilarious. That Today Show interview he showed up on last year, where he was plastered drunk.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was legendary.
He's almost as old as Nick Saban, but what I will say, I think sometimes they go too far. I see a lot of people on Instagram saying he has a running in the Heisman race.
No.
That's just not
no.
Now they talk about, he's had like 21 games in a row with 250 passing yards. He has a national championship. All right, listen. That has nothing to do with this Heisman campaign. That was last year. Heisman is this year. So
I think
what I'll say to those people who are saying Stetson, cool it, all right?
I think it comes back to the same thing with the college football playoff rankings. Like, Georgia needs to be number one because they're the champions. Until they lose, they're number one. You can't live in last season. You've got to focus on this season. And this season, while Stetson showed up tremendously in the UT game, he's not. I wouldn't put him in the top 5.
And Tennessee, they deserved it to that point. Whether or not you thought Georgia's going to win, you can't argue they had the nicest looking resume up to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in some extent you can be like Stetson Bennett's in the mix, but in the mix is my least favorite word in all of sports
5 to 10
media.
maybe. He's in the next 5, possibly.
He's in the mix. Like, does that mean okay?
Yeah, what do you say? Like Stroud, Hooker,
Bijan Robinson's in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
if it ended today, even after that UT game, he is not on the stage in the Heisman Trophy presentation.
I don't think so. And if he is, he's 5.
Yeah,
if he is,
he's the guy they threw in there that everyone knows he's not going to win it. But because there's always, if there's ever any question, it's usually between one or two people.
Like the third guy with Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey.
It's like, so congrats on making it.
Yeah.
Who's yours, Tyler?
Mine, it had to be Evan Hull. Okay, I showed up at noon to watch this Ohio State game, not thinking that Northwestern had any chance. Hopeful that
we were actually planning on watching Texas.
Yeah, we were gonna play
TCU. We couldn't find the channel. So we ended up watching this game.
And this guy goes off. He goes off. Okay, so first of all, Northwestern, horrible this season. 1-7, like I said, haven't won a national championship. Not that too. Haven't won a game in North America in over a year. And he comes in and he has over 100 yards rushing. He has a touchdown. He's averaging 4 yards. And they've got this guy. He's like a Derrick. He was pretty much what Derrick Henry is to the Titans, to Northwestern. He's lining up in the Wildcat. He's taking every handoff. There was a 4th and 1 they didn't convert, but you knew who the ball was going to. And it was still in question if he was going to get it or not. He broke off on some 20-yard inside run where he just pops it outside to score the touchdown. And I think he showed that this Ohio State team especially the defense is not as good.
They looked vulnerable.
They did not look good. And you'll have people again say, "Oh, the weather," but I mean, the weather doesn't affect the running game as much as the passing game, definitely. But I think that's going to show that what happened. It snowed in the OSU Michigan game last year, didn't it? What's going to happen when that happens this year? And you have Blake Corum and Michigan's offensive line coming at you. So I think Evan Hull, he played out of his mind. He showed the holes in OSU's defense and definitely raised a few questions about that team.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. I think leaving that game, my biggest thing was why is this dude the guy that's showing holes in Ohio State's defense? At least early, he definitely did. Because, I mean, I get Northwestern only scored 7 points, and Hull wasn't like crazy, but he was the offense for Northwestern
absolutely.
in this game. In a lot of ways, my pick for Ball of the Week, Bijan Robinson, is the same way. All over Clemson, right? And Quinn Ewers had a pretty okay day. He threw for 197. But Bijan Robinson was the Texas offense, okay? He had 30 carries for 209 yards with a 68-yard sprint. I mean, he looked fantastic. And the Texas run game looked really good in general. But, man, Bijan Robinson is, like, special as a running back. I think that he could definitely be taken in the draft, like, top 15.
You think he's the first running back off the board?
Yeah, by a mile.
By a mile.
I don't know who you're taking above.
I don't know. I don't think Corum's draft eligible, is he?
No, I think he is, but I don't think Corum's going to come.
I don't think he will. I think he's going to stay in Michigan another year.
Well, anyway, I still think you take Bijan because Bijan can line up at the slot.
That's fair.
And still looks really, really good. I'm excited to see Bijan Robinson in the NFL. He's going to be a monster. I just hope he ends up going to like some decent team. It's not like, terrible.
Same thing for Bryce Young too. You could say Bryce Young goes to the Texans.
He's going to end up on the Panthers.
Something, if you're just a box score guy that you may not have seen from the Michigan-Rutgers game, Michigan was down at halftime, 17-14. Of course, they came back and had, 38 points in the second half? Yeah, but they were down at halftime.
They're vulnerable. And I think OSU's proven that.
OSU is one of those teams, though, that if they're down at halftime, OSU can hang on long enough.
Yeah, I think the Penn State game, especially, I don't think Hull proves some rushing. I'd say holes in the OSU defense, and I think Penn State's running back had a really good game, but as bad of game as Penn State's quarterback had against OSU, there were 2 drives in the second quarter where he was just back to back. And he had 2 wide open receivers, and they come and score and get the lead. And I think, I don't know, OSU, did he have 2 fumbles and 3 picks or something? And the fact that Penn State was still somewhat in that game.
Yeah, he had 5 turnovers. Yeah, Clifford 3 picks, 3 touchdowns, so it cancels out pretty much. Yeah,
I don't think
Clifford probably won them that game. Their defense,
that one guy with what did he have? He had the pick 6, another pick.
Him and Clifford worked together for that one. I wouldn't say that was that much of a convincing win as Michigan Penn State was. Of course, you had the Michigan Penn, the changing environments. Of course, Ohio State had to go to State College for that. Always a tough environment to play in, 105,000 people. But
wide out.
Yeah, and Michigan got them at home. Yeah. But still,
I think, especially you get the NFL and you're the Titans played the Chiefs last night. It was at the Chiefs. And that's barely any factor at all, right? But, in college football, that couldn't be further from the truth. Look at Tennessee. How many false starts? First drive, 3 false starts in Georgia.
All games.
That's horrible. That's horrible. Bama, anytime they go on the road, they get 20 penalties, okay? And I wish that's not even
blame it on the refs. Some of them are on the refs. A lot of it is just, it's a tough environment to play in. College football, home field advantage is a real thing.
I think Bama got a little unfortunate this year with they had to play Texas on the road. They had to play Tennessee on the road. They had to play LSU on the road. Neyland's a tough place to play in. Even it wasn't a night game, but 3:30 still that. Neyland was packed. Neyland was loud.
A bunch of drunk fans.
Absolutely. Baton Rouge, Death Valley at night. That's a place you do not want to be in. And Texas, like the atmosphere.
Game day was there.
Yeah, like they've played
Pat McAfee's first show ever.
Pat McAfee. I've seen some people hating on him a little bit. I think that's a great addition to game day. He adds it. He adds a great when he's just screamed at Luke Bryan about his friend.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. And then College Game Day post that to the Instagram and it's just all bleeped out. And he had like a stern talking to in the back after that. Did we say that? No.
Yeah. Even he realized it soon as said it. Luke Bryan's like, oh, I didn't know he could say that. He's like, oh, we can.
All right. Well, that's going to mostly wrap up the show. We're going to end it off how we're always going to end off these shows with a little bit of college football playoff picks. So,
okay.
All right. So I'm going to go with my. I'm going to list out my top 4 and then the next 2 right now.
Right now, or like what we think it's going to be like at the end of the season.
We can do it into the season. Let's do that. I think that's more interesting than just saying right now.
All right.
Into the season, I think I'm going to go with Georgia at 1. I don't see anybody beating them.
No.
They looked really good.
I think Georgia's a lock for 1 right now.
Yeah, I think Georgia's the only team that's firmly cemented their spots.
Yeah.
So
basically, Ohio State, Michigan, either one of them, they're dropping out.
Yeah.
I think my pick right now, I'm going to say Georgia 1, Michigan 2. I think Michigan's going to end up beating Ohio State. I just like this Michigan team, man.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels a little bit different than the past couple of years. Got down at Rutgers.
McCarthy is different than, was it McNamara or something?
McNamara. I think.
He's different. He's shown he's shown some flashes. I think he's a pretty good quarterback.
I do like him. At 3, man. I think right now I'm gonna go with TCU. I think they have a pretty good shot of finishing out the year undefeated. I don't really think anyone's really going to come up and sort of challenge for that spot. I think my last pick is going to be Tennessee right now. I just don't feel like Oregon gets through USC, Washington. I don't know. I don't trust this Oregon team.
Oh, yeah. They'll play USC in the Pac-12 championship, likely. Yeah. That's not a regular season team for them, though. They got lucky with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. What are y'all's picks? And then we'll end off the show.
I'll go next. So I think, like we said, Georgia cemented 1. And then I think 2 is going to be your Big Ten winner, which I agree with you. I think it's going to be Michigan. I think Michigan, with Corum, goes in and runs it down OSU's throat, kind of like they did last year. They went off last year on the running game. And so I think Michigan 2. And then 3, I'm putting Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to move up. I think TCU is going to lose
so you think at some point. And Oregon falters, basically.
Don't hold off.
Oh, okay.
I think I got Oregon at 4. Okay. I think Oregon is going to win out and win the Pac-12. And I think the committee does not want 2 SEC teams playing in the first round. Okay. I think they did that a little bit last year with Alabama and Georgia, and I think that it'll be 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3 Tennessee, 4 Oregon.
You think they're going to do a rematch of Georgia and Oregon, though?
Yeah, I think. Well, you've got to do it at some point. I think TCU will fall to Texas or Baylor, and I think or both. And I don't think you're going to put a 1-loss Big 12 team champion in above Tennessee if they win out. And I don't think the Pac-12 champion, especially if it's Oregon with that loss to Georgia, I don't think you put them in above Tennessee. But they might. The committee does like champions. Look at like the 12 format, 1 through 4. It doesn't matter. Like you could be like the best. Like it's about the championships. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are. It's about the 4 best champions from the 6 conferences, which shows in my mind that they want conference champions in the playoffs. And so I think that'll hurt Tennessee just being from the East and not being even able to play in the SEC championship. But I think
they're not going to play anybody to end out this season. I think so.
They need to focus. They need to win out because Missouri has shown up against bigger teams. South Carolina has shown up against bigger teams. I mean, Vandy's like
Vandy gave Ole Miss some trouble.
Vandy, man, I had them in the playoffs. You know, Vandy's those guys right now.
Game day to Music City,
the baseball playoffs, but.
I guess that ends out with Meyer.
So, I have very similar picks to you. Number 1, the Georgia Bulldogs. No question there. Cemented the best team in college football. 2, I'm going opposite you guys, Ohio State. I think Michigan has shown they can struggle. They're a second half team. They can struggle early, and as we saw, they gave up 17 to Rutgers in the first half. I mean, they could possibly give up 30 to Ohio State in the first half.
And it is at OSU.
Yeah, it's in Columbus. If they are down like 2 touchdowns going into halftime, OSU, they could hold on to that and win it. So I will go the Big Ten champion, Ohio State, barring some unexpected loss to Illinois or Iowa or something, or Purdue.
Iowa? Did you say Iowa?
Iowa's been balling out these 2 weeks. Yeah. Iowa stuck it to Northwestern, unlike their other Big Ten counterpart couldn't do. And then they killed Purdue. Like Petrus, he's in the Heisman race, in my opinion.
Dude, remember Iowa? Is that Iowa's punter?
No, that's their quarterback. He's horrible. But no, their punter should be in the Heisman race. That kid's insane.
That man is
so good.
That man's the most valuable player in all of college sports.
He honestly could make a case for that. He is so like the fact when they was it North Dakota State or South Dakota State?
It was South Dakota State week 1.
It was 7-3 with 2 safeties and a field goal, and those 2 safeties were like punts inside the 5. Like that guy is insane. Iowa probably wouldn't have even like they're not playing great, but they would not be playing good without that.
We're in the middle of a college football playoff talk. We're ranting about Iowa.
Iowa's punter. I'm telling you, that guy should be top 10 in the Heisman voting.
All right, number 3. I have the Tennessee Volunteers. I think they win out. I don't think TCU does. They got 2 tough games. Obviously, at Texas, game day is going to Austin again. I mean, it's going to be a tough place to play. Texas has shown they handled Kansas State way easier than TCU did. I mean, they have a tough loss against Oklahoma State. But, I mean, Texas, they can give anybody trouble. We saw that with Alabama. Those road...
I like Texas. I like Texas.
I do too. I mean, that road environment is tough. Yeah, a lot of people complain that they were the only 3-loss team to be in the college football playoff rankings. I think they've shown. I mean, they have some bad losses. I mean, Bama, that's a good loss. They lost by a point.
Texas Tech in overtime without Quinn Ewers, right?
Yeah,
he was hurt that game.
They earned their spot in the top 25, especially after this week. So I think TCU falls. So that I put Tennessee at 3 and the Ducks at 4.
I like Tennessee at 3 too because I think the committee will try to stay as far away as they can from a Georgia Tennessee rematch.
I agree.
I think the Ducks could be interchanged. USC wins out, wins the Pac-12 championship. That's a 1 loss to a Utah team who's going to be ranked probably top 15 at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I think with a Pac-12 championship, USC could slip into
all
the
playoffs.
Pac-12
is like back to back to back to back. I think it was Oregon, USC, UCLA, and then like Utah, like a couple spots back. So they're all bunched up there in the like 8 to 15 range.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the first Totally Biased Sports Podcast. Guys, it was an awesome time sitting here talking about some football.
A crazy week to start with, too.
Yeah, a great week to pick to start. Hopefully we get more weeks like this that are just as exciting.
Maybe like change a few games or 2.
maybe, but awesome week. Can't wait to do this again. This was great.